What is the most important position in football?
Of the Hollywood matinee idol.
The natural reaction is the obvious: quarterback.
It's a joke.
Then maybe some course correction. There was that one guy that put together a lot of good defenses in New England. Quarterbacks and coaches.
It's not about politics, it's about football.
But this season with the Eagles was different. For the first time in football history, many weren't pointing to Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, or Nick Sirianni, the coach. Many were pointing up.
Hurts going deep. You want to win, though. You want to win.
I do want to win.
Up to a comfortable suite.
I want to win more than you know.
Where General Manager Howie Roseman sat.
I mean, Howie Roseman, to me, if he's not executive of the decade, I mean, he's definitely executive of the year. Go Birds!
A man who never coached or played a down of organized football. We know that Howie and the Eagles did some strange stuff with the cap space, but this is much bigger than that, and I don't think we realize it.
Each man a specialist, but one man stands above the rest.
General Manager might be the only title that has transferable skills to our working world. The General Manager is the man who almost fired me at P.F. Chang's for bringing the salmon out to the wrong table. And this begs a few questions. Number one, what in the world is this general and what role does he play? And number two, who the hell orders salmon at P.F. Chang's? The word general comes from the Latin word generalis, contrasting with the Latin word specialis. A general is also a commander in that he sits and stands comfortably away from the battlefield, watching his fledglings go to war. But the general is a car insurance company, and General Mills makes food. And if we look at the history of general manager, it seems like football didn't really know what it was either. The first coaches were general managers. They were owners, promoters, and sometimes players too. Charisma and grit was the currency. Then some guy had the audacity of turning these players into, quote, incident pieces on a chessboard.
Everybody has their part to play.
Making play sheets, having his coaches up in the press box, Paul Brown turned the game into an intellectual fair, but he was still not the first general manager. That title is reserved for Tex Schramm of the Cowboys, widely believed to be the game's first pure general manager, overseeing management duties without any coaching responsibility. More teams followed this separation of church and state, and general managers like Bobby Beathard showed us how active the role could be, dealing picks constantly. The Redskins did not have a single first-rounder from 1982 to 1990.
And the Redskins were crowned world champions.
And in 1994, the salary cap would be introduced, furthering the need for suits separate from the men on the field. This is a similar pattern for many beloved things. As soon as money enters the group chat, more dudes earn general titles, and the flowchart starts to look like the Mississippi Delta.
You know, the 21 years I've been in the league, I would say it's doubled, almost tripled.
Rex Hogan was the former assistant GM and director of college scouting with the Jets.
Early on in Chicago, it was a really small staff, like I had talked to you about, that we had 6 area scouts and then a director, and that was it. And each one of us were responsible for, you know, a particular region of the United States. But as we continued to grow and had new leadership come in within the Bears, we added a layer of, not only did we have the 6 area scouts, but we had 3 national scouts who would go over the top.
Middle managers managing middle managers, the end game of seemingly every corporate entity. But today, those suits are playing bigger roles than ever, not just in the professional sense, but in the college game as well. This is a new era, and one man is at the center of it all. Let's bring this man down to the field.
Hey man, it's Howie Rosen. I'm the GM of the Eagles. How you doing?
Howie's rise has been well documented, going from unpaid intern ascending to the ultimate fantasy football role of GM. And traditionally, when we think of what makes a great GM, we tend to think of one day.
The 2025 NFL Draft is now officially open.
The draft. The draft isn't just a stage for athletes. It is a stage for general managers, but only in hindsight.
If he doesn't play both sides of the football, you wasted a pick.
I wouldn't even be able to put a number on the amount of conversations that you have leading up before the draft.
Rex is largely involved in drafting Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, a rare circumstance where 2 rookies won Rookie of the Year on the same team. Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, among others.
It's the misses that you carry with you longer. That's the biggest thing is surviving the mistakes.
Rex, of course, didn't name any of those misses, but I had to look back at the most publicized.
Zach Wilson, quarterback, BYU.
And I couldn't help but notice who else do the Jets have drafted? The other first-rounders that came after, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. We've talked a lot about the surplus value of hitting on a rookie quarterback, and the Jets desperately needed one.
Sam Darnold, the Jets starting quarterback for the last several years, is now headed to the Carolina Panthers.
Knowing this, how much of the miss was this on Wilson? Couple this with an A-Rod Achilles injury to open up the following season. Not the best fortune.
The Jets are thinking that's the only loss on that play.
Let's widen our lens here to look past these narratives, to look at draft success organizationally. We're to use PFF's WAR as a metric, data courtesy of Timo Riske. WAR in this case being wins above replacement players. It's a way of valuing how well a team has drafted. This is for the time period of 2016 to 2023, and the Chiefs are on top. 3 Super Bowls and 4 appearances will do that, but upon further review, a large part of this success hinges on one massive selection, Mahomes. If the Chiefs really believed in him this much, why didn't they trade up even higher to make sure that they got him? Still, we have to credit them for this. They didn't just draft him, they took action to draft him, but this highlights the value of hitting on a QB. In an effort to somewhat control for this quarterback selection, let's look at this in a way that the team might, sorting by average percentile positional outcome rather than WAR. Chiefs still on top, Eagles at 4. Note that we are only going to 2023 here given the fact that later years have not had enough time to develop. Drafting is crucial to a team's success. We see the top 4 teams in the NFL last season were in the top 6 by this measure. This highlights Howie's success and suggests that there really is something to his ability, the Eagles' ability, to see and identify talent as of late. But just for fun, let's switch the years up. We'll still stay within Howie's tenure and look at a different set. We see the Eagles near the bottom, 29th. Howie and the Eagles struggled, and as Riske points out in his analysis, we can effectively do this with essentially every NFL GM if given a long enough tenure. For the draft nerds, this points more to chance than skill. In this case, Howie and the Eagles have been more fortunate than skilled when it comes to drafting as of late, a big reason why they have had tremendous recent success. Drafting is arguably the greatest responsibility the GM has. If you draft poorly, you're probably gone fairly soon. And yet, we still have Howie with the Eagles despite 4-year stretches like this, and importantly, the Eagles made the Super Bowl shortly after this run. This suggests that there's something more to being a general.
You just don't know what's going to happen. And I think that anxiety is what motivates us and motivates me.
What would you be willing to offer?
It builds, the closer you get to the pick, you feel it. Like the room can feel it. All right, what does this team need? Are they going to go for this guy? When you're on the clock, you can get as many as 5 to 10 calls from teams, or it can be 0. You have to be prepared for anything.
Like a merchant in a bazaar, GMs and teams must barter with one another.
You can have multiple offers at the same time. So you have screens that have the different trade value. Do we have a better trade with team 1, team 2? We'll have a quick and thorough discussion on the value of it, and either we'll make the trade or we'll stick and pick.
Any interest in a small move back? You want to flip?
Howie is notorious for dealing. He's made 53 draft day trades in the last decade alone, and that's just what's gone through.
It gets chaotic, and there could be a run on a position. All of a sudden, you're out of guys that you liked at that position. All right, do we need to try and slide back up? Do we need to just go ahead and bail, get out? Everybody wants to win, but at the same time, you want to be fair because you want to do future business with these guys. And there's natural relationships and friendships, and there's times when the phone's ringing and you look at it and you'll be like, oh man, here we go. Let's be leery of this one.
Now, I might be alone on this, but I don't think Howie has been fleecing other teams. Looking at a lot of these trades, they seem pretty fair. It's what he's doing in coalition with the trades, primarily how the Eagles are structuring the contracts. If we look at that A.J. Brown trade, the Eagles gave up some valuable picks, enough to have some claiming that it was a misstep, especially for a soon-to-be expensive player in Brown. Brown had somewhat underperformed in Tennessee and was seeking an expensive long-term extension, the exact spot many teams consider moving on from a player. But somehow, Roseman comfortably signed Brown to a $100 million extension. The Eagles pulled off a similar trade with cornerback Darius Slay just a few years earlier, signing him to a $50 million deal in 2020. Far from what the Lions were willing to pay, and recently they've just re-signed and restructured basically all of their studs without really any pain. The cap is not real. That crowd loves these examples, but it has to do with the structure of the contract, primarily the usage of void years. Think of the void years like an interest-free loan. It's not that the pay doesn't eventually count against the cap, it's a push to spread things out to the future. As an adjacent example, imagine if you could get a 0% loan for a home today. You'd probably take that person up on the offer. Part of the strategy banks on a rising cap environment, which has happened essentially every year outside of the COVID year. If it seems strange that more owners aren't going with this strategy, keep in mind it requires something today. Cash.
Cash is king. I mean, money talks.
That's John Idzik, former general manager of the New York Jets. Although void years can spread out cap hits, most of these deals still require a big signing bonus up front. That means money now from an owner.
You're always going to want and ask for more.
Of course, it isn't just about finding the talent. That talent needs to mesh.
Some you can get intoxicated by the talent or the production, but how does that translate into your environment? You know, and that by your environment, that could be your scheme. It could be your coaches that come in direct contact with that player. It could be his teammates, his supporting cast. It could be, in New York's case, it could be the environment itself.
As my previous video on entanglement highlighted, for many positions, it is highly unpredictable how a player will translate between environments. But since many of these players are already proven commodities, either internally already with the Eagles, or they're coming from teams at positions that are fairly predictable, like wide receiver, A.J. Brown, this feels like less of a gamble on the present.
Structures of contracts are very important. One, it's precedential setting for the organization. So you may make an exception here, but as soon as you make a couple exceptions, it becomes part of the vernacular for an agent to come in and try to pry that door open again. You got to be mindful of that from an organization standpoint. Where may you have a little bit more flexibility? There'll be league trends that you don't necessarily like, but you have to account for. But it's cash flow in the deal. It's guaranteed money in the deal. And from a club standpoint, the timing of things come into play as well as structure.
If we look at when these contracts are coming due for the Eagles, many are in 2030, as highlighted by Brett Coleman. Howie's background in salary cap management undeniably helped him here. However, something a GM might not be prepared for, the public, they don't care about contracts in cap sheets.
Well, we're talking about the frustration of the Jets fans. It's been 11 years since they saw any postseason action.
When I first got to New York, my introduction was at the Senior Bowl. I get off the plane from Mobile, it's snowing, and I've got an introductory press conference the next day. And it's literally a whole auditorium. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was in Tampa, Arizona, Seattle, nothing like that. That kind of opened my eyes.
The reluctant politician.
Ultimately, I'm responsible for the performance of our team. That lies with me.
You're used to dealing with the football aspects, right? That comes naturally. But, all these other things, you realize that this is not only part of the job, it's very, very important part of the job, and you need to address it. That was the biggest adjustment for me, because I was used to just knuckling down and doing the jobs. But then there was this whole other public persona aspect that definitely comes into play, especially now in the world of social media, and everyone has much deeper insights into what goes on within organizations. But just in general, okay, what are we going to do for training camp? Who are we going to join practice against? What about the team flights? What about the meals? All the sundry of things that really come across your desk, and hopefully you hire good people around you that help you in those regards. I think in one of my introductory press conferences was judge us by what we do and not what we say. And there were snickers in the room because I'm just used to, hey, our actions are going to speak for us. And yet words and the way you present yourself and the way you're perceived by the media, by the community, they're very important.
Idzik is so clueless.
It's the early part of practice in there, and I looked up and I'm like, oh man.
We are quick to forget that the city of Philly was calling for Howie's head at one point at a different sporting event. Unless you have a recent history of winning big, managing the public's perception is not optional. That perception can leak into the minds of ownership, coaches, players, or something else you're often in charge of, your staff.
The enormity of the job now and the versatility that you have to play, I think, is the most daunting thing. Handling everything from support groups to community relations to managing people, managing your coaching staff, having a relationship with your owner. Of course, there's the PR aspect. I was in New York, the media capital of the world. It's not just player acquisition and player evaluation anymore. It's a much broader management position now.
This is the second word in our title, manager.
You're used to dealing with the football aspects, right? That comes naturally. But, all these other things, you realize that this is not only part of the job, it's very, very important part of the job.
Manager comes from the Latin root word manus, which means hand. Makes sense. Quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Armra Colostrum. This is not a supplement, this is a whole food. Colostrum is a bioactive food that's produced by all mammals. And I wanted to try this out for 30 days before I made an ad. As far as the experience that I've had, the one big difference is just less bloating. Like, especially midday, I don't have those midday crashes. It's helping with the bloating. And I haven't had other effects or differences that I've noticed, but that alone for me, I feel like just makes my day a lot better. I feel lighter. I'm not having those big crashes that I would have. It's one scoop 3 to 4 times a day. I just drop this in the water and stir it around. It literally tastes like nothing. So again, this is just one ingredient in this container, and it contains over 400 bioactive nutrients. So if you want to try it out for yourself, you can click the link down below. Use code MichaelM for 15% off today. Again, it's helped me out. Feel free to check it out yourself. And thank you to Armra for sponsoring this video. GM is also typically in charge of hiring and sometimes firing a head coach, coordinators, the staff, scouting, and analytics. Howie is the vice president / general manager. Yes, it would appear as though football cannot even escape these corporate titles that by definition tell you nothing. In effect, though, he is the CEO. And for the first time, we are starting to see this at the college level too.
You look at, Cal and Stanford, both of them have very prominent general managers. Cal has Ron Rivera, who went to Super Bowl as Carolina Panthers head coach. Stanford has Andrew Luck, well-known former quarterback who retired. Both of those guys have the power to fire or hire a head coach based on how I understand their structures. So it's kind of an ambiguous title right now.
So ambiguous that some GMs, like Texas Tech's James Blanchard, has the ability to directly offer players. Fueled by a former Red Raider and landman, Blanchard tapped the West Texas oil fields not to fuel Friday, but Saturday night lights. Across college football, employing a GM has become somewhat of table stakes for a serious program, especially given the complexity and workload associated with managing the various streams of capital. There are essentially 3 sources of money for a player. We'll use Ryan Williams from Alabama as an example. With the new House settlement, there is now a de facto salary cap for programs of up to $20.5 million. The big boys will probably be maxing this out, with roughly 80 to 90% going to football. This is money directly from the institution, meaning over time, we'll probably see a few less professors in the humanities department. If there's 105 players on scholarship and Bama pays 80% to football, that means the average player would earn $156,000.
It's really just up to each school and how they want to do things. You don't want to have your locker room destroyed by really wide disparities in pay. They might be paying a defensive lineman $1 million, and they might be paying their punter $50K. So it's all over the map, and it'll be interesting to see how that impacts a locker room.
The second source is the collectives. These are the pseudo booster clubs, mostly alumni who are setting up things like car dealership appearances. Except they make a lot more money than Kenny Powers. A lot more. Lastly, there is the independent NIL deals.
Nike recently signed a deal with him, which is believed to be pretty lucrative. So he's getting 3 different buckets of money right now. Again, that'll probably change as time goes on, but that's where it stands right now.
College GMs are involved in allocating the rev share in the collective funds, though the independent deals seem as they sound independent to the player. Of course, the role extends far beyond just allocation of capital. It's rather ambiguous right now. And a big part of that has to do with a term that makes middle-aged men churn. Transfer portal.
What the agents are doing is, if I'm the agent of Jeremiah Smith, I'm taking all kinds of calls and I'm going to Ohio State and saying, hey, he wants to stay. These guys are offering him X amount of dollars. I don't know what to tell him, but that's what happened to Ohio State last year. Is a lot of people thought they went out and bought their roster. A lot of it was retaining. When I talk to these coaches and these GMs, the good programs, that's where they're spending most of their money, because the agents get an All-American or an All-Conference player, and you got another team that's desperate to have that guy, and they'll pay 2 times, 3 times what he's being paid. And now you've got a decision to make. Do we have the space to pay this guy this money, or are we going to let him go? It's so strange, but that's their reality.
So who was the MVP of Ohio State's run last year? Was it Coach Ryan Day, a man that was fighting for his job at the end of the regular season that year? Will Howard maybe the quarterback? Or was it a man that you maybe haven't heard of? Mark Pantoni, the general manager who pieced together the deals to recruit and retain the consensus most talented team in the country. Now, to be fair to Ryan Day and the rest of the Ohio State team, it's not as simple as just throwing money at a roster. We've seen that fail already.
Miami was one of those places that first year they had a lot of kids going to the coach's office and complaining about their pay and, did not have a good year that year. So that's something that I think is going to be really critical for GMs, head coaches, is finding ways to make it feel somewhat fair and balanced within their roster, knowing that especially this generation of kids is much more open about talking about money.
Pantoni isn't just a man on his knees before boosters. This requires strategy. He's got to deal with teenagers, agents. He's got to be thinking of Ohio State's scheme. He's got to be understanding the coaching. And, well, let's be honest here, he is still dealing with a finite amount of money, probably not far off from the other top programs. Still, I think this is probably just going to be the conversation every year when a good program wins. They just had more money. Ohio State spent more on athletics as a university than any other public school for 5 straight years, while simultaneously building one of the largest NIL war chests. Overwhelmed by all this, pillars in the coaching world have simply left the game. Last fall, when I was doing a video on realignment, I watched a kid run wild in the Palouse.
Now he brings it down, no doubt about this. What a move. What a move by Mateer. Oh, he's still going.
Welcome.
Thank you.
By midseason, it was a foregone conclusion that John Mateer wasn't going to be in Eastern Washington anymore.
My line coach, Coach Kessler, another shout out, used to call me Johnny Paycheck.
The Cougs don't have the same cap space as their in-state rival or any of the big programs. And like many smaller programs, they don't have a dedicated GM. They don't have a general.
It's one thing to get players on campus. It's another thing to make sure they have a great experience here and they feel like they're being developed. And with the scouting staff taking so much of that lift off them, that's what our coaches are going to be able to do now. Getting John Mateer, he's a difference maker. You got to have that guy. Oklahoma, you just look in recent history with Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray, Baker. They've had really high-end quarterback play here. There's not too many schools over the last 10, 15 years that match up at the quarterback position with OU. And now to bring in John, I think he's kind of the next one in line.
When Daryl Morey brought James Harden and Chris Paul together, it was nightmare fuel for our traditionalists. Isolation, seemingly never-ending threes. And then it worked. Practically overnight, it worked. And the Rockets led 3-2 against the unbeatable dynasty, the Warriors, in their prime. But unfortunately, they would go on to lose one of those stars. And unfortunately, they would miss 27 consecutive threes in Game 7. And the Houston Doubters, which included myself at the time, narrowly escaped. Daryl Morey narrowly missed on championship credit. Howie Roseman did not miss. For the first time in football history, the NFL and its AAA affiliates saw a new hero, their systems. It was the architect, not the performer, the CEO, not the founder, the general. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and take care.